Hello, my name is George Brown, and I am playtesting a video game by Mark Brown, no relation. For those of you not familiar, Mark Brown has a YouTube channel called Game Maker's Toolkit, hence the GMTK written up there. It's a video game design YouTube channel, and as part of that, he has a series called Developing, where he is working on creating his own game, which, as you can see, is tentatively being called Untitled Magnet Game. Despite that title, it's not actually a stealth game about a magnet terrorizing the residents of a village in the English countryside. It is, in fact, a puzzle platformer where you play as this robot who solves various puzzle platforming challenges with a magnet, hence the magnet part of the title. So this is just a very early demo, what's called a minimum viable product. So that's before beta is alpha, this is before alpha, so it's just the bare bones bits of gameplay, some rudimentary graphics and sound, and some actual semblance of puzzles so that it can actually be given to other people to play for play testing purposes. And I'm basically going to be going through this and just trying to nitpick every little detail that I can out of it to help actually go from this minimum viable product to a more fully developed game down the line. So this isn't a review, it is a play test of a very incomplete demo. So starting out, before even getting to any of the puzzles, I just want to talk about the controller itself. There are some little cheats that Mark made in designing this sprite character, where you see the robot is on wheels rather than walking around, and that's to make the run cycle easier to animate. I think it looks pretty cool. It has some nice particle effects of dust behind it. Also, the arms are not pixel art sprites. They're made using a line renderer in the Unity engine, while the rest of the robot is made with sprites, and this will come when the robot actually needs to carry the magnet. It'll make it easier to animate, and I think it makes it look pretty cool. So all in all, I like this. The jump is pretty floaty, however, I have seen some subsequent footage that shows that Mark has been working on making the jumping less floaty. So some of the changes that he's made are, this is made using some attempt to replicate actual physics, so you'll see the robot is moving in a parabolic arc like you would expect, but it's a really tall parabolic arc compared to somebody actually jumping, and that's what tends to create that floaty image in a lot of 2D platformers. And the way around that is to use fake cartoony physics, where a character will move up more slowly, then they go down. And another thing is that if I just lightly tap on the jump versus if I hold down on the jump, there isn't really any difference there at the moment, but that is being changed so that you can lightly tap to jump a small amount and hold down to jump a larger amount. I do like this visual look of this circle of light around the robot. I think it looks pretty cool. But moving on to the actual gameplay. One thing that is very weird is this square that looks like a platform, too high up for me to jump on top of, high enough up that I can go underneath it and then see that it's not actually a platform at all, it's a tooltip. So that image there is a depiction of 4 buttons on a video game controller, either Xbox or PS4, and it's telling you, I think, that the button at the bottom is what you're supposed to press to jump, but I'm playing on a keyboard, so this tooltip is completely useless for me, and I already knew that you can use the spacebar to jump. So, when this goes from a minimum viable product to a more full game, you'll want the tooltips to be a bit more heavily adapted to the type of controller that you're being used to play, so that if you're playing on a PC, then it'll actually tell you which key to press, and if you're specifically on a PlayStation or on an Xbox, those 4 buttons will have particular letters or symbols indicating which button they are that will be more useful than just showing this sort of image. And for accessibility purposes, you will want to be able to support button remapping down the line so that people with fine motor issues can change which button they're using to control their character, and you would presumably want the tooltips to acknowledge those button remappings as well. But you don't expect all that stuff to be there this early on. Now here we have the first thing that sort of resembles a puzzle. You have some doors. They are closed. You can't go through them, but you'll see a wire going down connecting them to this button. Now, so the solution is just press the button. Nothing very complicated. I do want to just point this out. I am holding down the right arrow, and it takes me up to the button, and then the button acts as a wall. So if I actually want to press the button, I have to jump, and that's a little bit frustrating. It's not very high up. I would expect from like a game feel perspective that the robot would just roll up onto the button. I think it would feel a little bit better to play. Also with the current floaty controls, the fact that you have so much hang time to land on the button makes it feel a bit weird, but just some stuff to think about down the line. This next bit isn't really a puzzle at all. The fan looks pretty cool. It doesn't actually do anything gameplay-wise. It's just there to justify having this really high platform that we can't jump onto from the floor. And this is there pretty much as a tutorial to help get you used to the controls, because this platform is high enough up that you can get the relevant height, and it is close enough that you're able to get the relevant forward movement in order to make the jump. And so that's just there so that you can get used to how high and how far you can and can't jump. Not really a puzzle, but a useful assist to build the muscle memory for the more complicated stuff down the line. Here we have the first example of a platform that you can jump through, but you can't go back down, and there is something weird about this platform, and anytime one of these platforms appears this height above the ground, it gets a little bit weird. I'm going to show you. I'm going to hold down on the jump button, and it looks like the robot is just floating there, and I'm going to let go of the jump button, and nothing happened. This is just the height that the robot is. So first of all, it's a little bit weird that the robot is a few pixels above the platform, but also just from a game feel perspective, when you have one of these platforms where you can jump through it, you would expect that the character would overshoot a little bit and then slide back, fall back down to land on the platform, and the fact that that doesn't happen makes it look a bit weird. Later on, there are some other platforms that are a bit closer together where that does happen. One last thing is, while you can go up through these platforms, you can't go down. So one common thing that you would see in platforms where you have a platform like this is that if you press the down arrow and then the jump button, that you would jump down through the platform, but this doesn't let you do that. So that would be a nice little feature to add to basically get the types of gameplay that you would expect in a platform. And here we're at the end of our first puzzle area, and there is a door. One thing that I think would be a nice little bit of extra stuff to get to further down the line would be to have some animations of the character actually moving through the door. You'll see it's just going to go to this loading screen with a rotating magnet, and then the robot appears outside another door. Obviously, a bit of work to do that, and for something so early on in the game, not the most necessary. Hey, another thing that looks like a platform that's actually a tooltip. This time it's telling you a button that you can press to carry the magnet, and I mentioned that the arms of the character are not animated sprites, but line renders done using vector art, while the rest of the character is done using sprites. I really like the way that this looks and feels. It creates this actual physics component to what otherwise is more straightforward pixel art. It looks really good. And I know that it was done as a cheat around animation limitations to try and get things done on a deadline, but I think you should stick with it. So this puzzle is a basic tutorial puzzle. I like the sound that the magnet makes when it hits the door. You have a door that's blocking your way, but it's attached to a rope and there's weight on the other end. And if you just add a bit more weight through the magnet, then the door opens. Now there are some weird things with this weight, especially compared to later gameplay. So I did not press any button to let go of the magnet, and normally you would have to press the K button again to let go, and you would be able to grab onto it again by pressing the K button, which doesn't happen. Also, I noticed that as much as I praise the line renderer, that there is a bit of a weird layering issue where the line renderer for the character's arm is going in front of the magnet while the character is behind the magnet. So that looks a bit weird. Just a minor little bug fix there. Another weird thing about this compared to later on in the game is that there isn't any visual clue as to the range of the magnetic attraction to this weight. So later on, we'll see one of two things. We'll either see like some electromagnet that has a beam below it that shows anything underneath this beam will get sucked up, or you'll have some platform that will have a circle of light around it, and any time the magnet gets into the radius of the light, you will get drawn towards the object. But here it's just a weight, and there's some invisible barrier after which the magnet gets drawn to it. And so there's a little bit of inconsistency there. The same thing happens with this next puzzle. Here we have more of these platforms that you can jump through, and you'll notice that the top two are closer together than the bottom one is to the floor. So the same problem that I described happens with this bottom platform, where the character just floats and then doesn't go down. Then I jump up to the next platform, he goes up and down. He's still floating a little bit, I'm not sure why that happens, but at least the character did overshoot a bit and then slide down. The same thing happens here. So now we have another magnet. We can pick it up, and this time, once again, it's another simple tutorial puzzle. This platform is too high to jump up on its own, but there's this blue square that attracts the magnet, and once again, I didn't press any button to let go. It did that automatically. That changes in subsequent puzzles, but this means that the magnet can be used as a platform itself, and I can get up, and we're done with this puzzle area. Moving on, we see that the magnet falls out of these Flappy Bird pipes, and that's going to come into play because down the line you might make a mistake and destroy your magnet for some reason, and they respawn through those Flappy Bird pipes. So we have some more of these things that look like platforms, but they're not platforms, and this time one of them lines up, and we find that the character cannot take the magnet through the platform because the ceiling is too low, and this forces us to learn some new mechanics. And we once again have the platform where we just seem to be floating, and then another one where we do fall back down a bit. Okay, so here we have a T-bar, and we see a wire up above it that is connected to this set of doors. And I can press the K button to grab onto the T-bar, and now the doors open, and you notice that the T-bar rotated to the side, so I can't grab it anymore, so I can't close the doors. Another thing that you might notice is that the doors, other controls appeared. Once they retracted, they just retracted into the walls, and now you can't see them anymore, and so you don't see any indication that the doors ever existed in the first place, and that is a problem down the line that a number of people have complained about in some future puzzles where the doors start out retracted and then close down later on. So we mentioned here that we cannot carry the magnet underneath, but what we can do is throw it. And to throw it, in the keyboard settings, we press the Shift key and it doesn't do anything, and I press K and it just drops it. But if I pick it up, press Shift, and hit, say, the up arrow, it shoots straight up. And if I press the up and right arrow, it shoots diagonally, but not enough to actually get it over the edge. And what I need to do... Hey, wait a minute. Just a moment. Come just try something. Oh, no. I was just trying to see if I could break it by dropping the magnet. If you're playtesting, trying to break things is kind of fun. But if you press the E key, then you can do this. This isn't the most ideal design, as I mentioned. Mark built this prototype around using a controller, which is why the tooltips all show information for a controller rather than for a keyboard. So right now, the keyboard controls for throwing the magnet are a bit janky, but he is going to fix it down the line. From what I understand, the plans are that you will use the mouse to aim the magnet, so you'll have some sort of analog control similar to the analog sticks that you'll have if you play this with a controller. I do think for accessibility purposes that it would also be good, because some people have difficulty with mouse controls, to add an optional keyboard-based control where you would use the left and right arrow keys to turn your aim counterclockwise or clockwise. But for most people, the mouse control should be enough. I like the way that the camera moves when you go from one area to another. And here, this is designed, I believe, to show that you can throw the magnet while jumping, but it might be possible to not do that. Okay, you can throw the magnet while jumping, but this puzzle can be solved without that. One other thing that I want to point out is you get these sound effects if you bang the magnet into the wall, but not if you bang it into these platforms. It doesn't make any noise. So, just wanted to draw attention to that. And we have another one of these use the magnet as a platform bits. And now we get our first more complicated puzzle. So we have the same scenario that we saw before of a door and a weight, and we need to add the magnet to the weight so that it will pull down and open up the door, but now it's too high up. Even when we shoot it straight up in the air, it's not enough, so we have to get it up to the top. And once again, we don't have the clanging sound effect, but it doesn't let us carry the magnet through the platform. So we have a bit more of a complicated throwing thing to do, where we have to throw it up here. We can't jump that high, so we have to climb up here. Then we can jump over here. And there are some extra little complications that the magnet does weight you down, so we can't jump back carrying the magnet, so we do have to do some extra throwing here. So, as far as what's going on, this is, I think, some pretty clever puzzle design where you introduce this mechanic of the door attached to the weight, and then you introduce these more complicated mechanics about throwing, and then you create a more complicated puzzle. Oh, that is weird. Okay. That is a bug. Okay. Not sure what was going on there. Right. Where you get a more complicated puzzle that uses the same mechanics that you've learned up to this point. I think that's a good design, especially for an early going puzzle. It's not too complicated, but it's still something that involves piecing together all the mechanics that have been introduced thus far. And we're at the end of the puzzle area. Now, we see see our first example of a magnetic beam that I mentioned rather than just a weight that attracts things. So we have a button that we can press and a magnet fell down. That's pretty clever. If we jump on it again, the magnet gets drawn back up, and what we need to do is take the magnet out of the beam so that we can carry it, and then get ourselves sucked up through the beam. And as I mentioned here, when you're stuck to the ceiling, it doesn't automatically make you let go. You have to hit the K button again in order to do that. So that is how things will mostly be working. I don't know why they didn't do that for that earlier set of puzzles. And now we have a bit of a fake out here because the assumption would be that we want to go through the beam again, carrying this magnet, but that doesn't get us anywhere. If you watch Mark Brown's videos, he has some stuff about puzzle design, and part of this is the idea of assumptions and catches, where you try and get the player to make false assumptions about what the solution is to a puzzle, and then give them a more complicated thing that they actually need to do. Now, this is a very simple case of that, where you don't need to use this magnetic field at all, or you just want it to be deactivated, and then just use this sideways magnet thing that you had before. This one, I have a few issues with this because this is the first time where we actually get some sort of precision stuff going on. It's not just about a puzzle. It's about a puzzle that involves some timed button presses. So first things first, if we just go up here, we see those two things that look like platforms are not platforms but are tooltips. We see some other sorts of mechanical issues. So if I hold down the arrow keys, the character turns. If I'm holding down on the right key and let go, the character will fall, moving slightly to the right, but it won't jump to the right, so I can't get to the platform that way. I do think that it would be good to let the character actually jump off to the right when hanging from the ceiling and not just fall slightly to the right. But basically, this, to the extent that it is a puzzle, is really a puzzle about letting go at the exact right time while you're sliding up. So you want the magnet outside of the field so that you can pick it up, and then you want to get carried up, and then let go at the right time so that you can land on the platform. The problem is that you do need to be a bit precise. You can't wait until you get all the way to the top, and if you do it too early, then you don't quite make it. And what's a little bit frustrating about this is, first of all, that it is a bit slow to reset things. If you mess up, you have to turn off the magnetic field, move to the side, drop the magnetic field, or drop the magnet, turn the magnetic field back on, pick up the magnet again, and then try again. And this time I made it. The other issue is an issue that comes up a lot in puzzle platformers, where a typical platformer is about these precision, carefully timed button presses, where you often want to just practice the same thing until you get good and end up being able to get your timing right. But with a puzzle platformer, you're also trying to solve puzzles, and if you get stuck on a puzzle, you don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again. You want to step back and rethink the way that you solve the puzzle and maybe find a better solution, one that might actually work. And so this can lead to a situation where somebody might have the puzzle solved, but if they don't quite have the precision button timing quite right, they might think that they didn't solve it correctly and would end up trying a bunch of wrong solutions, when really they just need to keep on doing this over and over again until they get the button presses. You also have the other type of danger where somebody might think that they need to keep on doing something over and over again to get the button presses right, when really they just need to solve the puzzle a different way. So that's a thing that I think should be fixed. I think that could be fixed in that last puzzle just by lowering that platform a little bit, or letting you jump to the side by holding down the right key when you're hanging from the ceiling. Now we have a new mechanic. We have this moving platform, and now instead of a light beam, we have a circle of light and a tooltip. We have a circle of light around the platform that indicates that magnets will be attracted to this. And I think maybe something like that on those weights at the beginning would be useful. This is also the first place where you can die, and if you do die by falling on the spikes, then you'll just respawn at the beginning of this puzzle area. And this is also where you can first really make use of these Flappy Bird pipes, because if you throw the magnet into the spikes, magnets also get killed by spikes. I have seen some people complain about that because spikes don't normally kill magnets. They don't normally kill robots either, but I think it's enough of a standard video game shorthand that spikes kill things that I don't mind. One other thing here is that this platform is moving back and forth on a chain, and I want to point that out because that isn't happening everywhere in the game. So here we have another block that moves on a chain, but this time you see there is a wire going underneath the block that's connected to that green button. We have an easy to jump over pit of spikes, and that is clearly for the magnet here. So we have another T-bar, and it is connected to a bunch of things. It's connected to these closed doors on the right. It's connected to this drill-shaped platform that the magnet is on, and it's also connected to absolutely nothing over here. So obviously that won't do anything, except that it does. As I mentioned before, when you have hidden doors, there's often no or little indication that the doors even existed, and so that means that a lot of times suddenly closing doors come as a bit of a surprise. Now we see that this magnet is constantly dropping onto the spikes and being respawned, but we can fix that by moving this block. Now, it should be pointed out that respawning the magnet here, it is going to happen in the act of trying to solve this puzzle, that you are deliberately trying to respawn it. If that block below moved faster, then you could have just dropped the magnet onto the block as soon as the drill retracted. But you don't actually need to utilize the mechanic of respawning the magnet as part of the act of solving the puzzle, and that is not the case in the very last puzzle in this collection. And at least for me, I sort of thought of the respawning of the magnets not as a puzzle mechanic, but as a way out of making a mistake. If you accidentally destroy your magnet, or got it in a bad place, then you can respawn it. One other thing that I want to mention here is that this stuff is pretty slow, this T-bar. So here, you grab onto the T-bar, it turns sideways, and then this drill slowly moves out, and then the T-bar straightens again, and then you can grab it again. But you can't grab the T-bar while it's coming out. If I pull it again, then that drill slowly retracts, and you can't grab the T-bar until it's done. And that can make some things very slow if you pull the T-bar when you're not supposed to and need to undo it, or if you pull the T-bar and then miss some time bit. It would be good to be able to just grab it while things are retracting and then get it to change direction. It would save a bit of time if you make a mistake. And here we have another one of these weights, but this time it didn't automatically make me drop. And as I said, it would be nice if I could hold on to the arrow key and then jump off when I let go, but it's not the worst though, I guess. And here I can jump, grab onto this trapeze. This is different from the T-bar. You notice that the bar goes off to the two sides and it never tilts sideways, and this is something that always pulls the character up. And let's move on. Okay, so here we have a more complicated puzzle. So we need to somehow get to this platform in the middle, and there are various tools that we have at our disposal. Now, one thing that we might notice here is that there is this button that is a different color. It is gold. I say you might notice that because if you are colorblind, you won't notice that, and that is an accessibility feature that should be put into the game in subsequent revisions. But this gold one will activate when you're standing on it and not activate when you're not standing on it, whereas the green ones, you press, the state changes, you press again, the state changes. Here, the state is dependent on whether it's being pressed or not being pressed. And it does two things. It deactivates the magnetic field, and it makes this platform disappear. And part of that means that you can't get the magnet past this area. So anything that you do with the magnet has to be done in this early stage. I think that's a good design to keep people from wasting their time trying to bring the magnet to the other side. It also prevents some potential unintended solutions that would involve taking the magnet there. It means that you have to solve it with the magnet on this side. I would point out that I did see some people do this. They threw the magnet here onto the button, and then this pit of spikes. Because of how low the ceiling is, it is very difficult to jump over it, but it is actually possible to jump over it. And I had mentioned that there is this difficulty in puzzle platformers because with regular platformers, you're trying to get really precise to get good at these precise button presses, whereas in a puzzle game, you're trying to solve these logical problems. That's a much slower, laid-back process, and you can get stuck in a situation where you don't know if the problem is that you need to get good at the precision timing, or that you need to try a different method of solving the puzzle. So in this case, some people tried to jump over that pit of spikes and thought that that was the key to the puzzle and kept on trying over and over again and eventually succeeded. So one thing I think that would solve this is if you just had an extra pit of spikes, so that it would be made absolutely clear that there's no way that you could jump over it and that you're not supposed to, and that you want the platform above it so that you can roll over there. But anyway, you have here another T-bar. You have some of these platforms that you can climb up, and you can't really do anything with this magnetic platform when it's on this end. So you pull the T-bar. I think that there should be a wire connecting the T-bar to this chain that makes it clear that the T-bar controls the platform. But once you get here, it's a bit clear what you need to do. You need to throw the magnet up, and then you need to pull the T-bar again, and get the platform with the magnet on it back to your side. And then, once it's here, you can grab onto the magnet. Of course, you need to get the magnet to move. And so here we have another part where the rest of the solution to this puzzle involves some precision. So if I pull this thing, it'll eventually make me let go. I can jump up, and I missed it. And this is where the ability to not have to wait until the very end for the T-bar to reset would be nice. It would have been nice if I could have just pulled the T-bar earlier on and brought it back, it would have taken less time to redo things when I missed the precision thing. So let's try the precision again. I find with a lot of these fast-paced precision stuff where you have to grab onto the T-bar that pressing the K button twice will get me there. And now I can let go. And remember, grabbing onto this trapeze will pull you all the way up. I'm going to unsuccessfully attempt to break it by grabbing on and letting go, and it is nice that Mark knew that people might try that, so that the trapeze didn't pull all the way up, leaving me stranded. But now I can go all the way up here, and there is a little Easter egg area. So if you followed Mark Brown's channel where he worked on this game, in the pre-minimum viable product, the minimum unviable product, I guess, this is the sprite that he used for the robot, just this rectangle with, I don't know if that's a smile or a monobrow, but just a little Easter egg in the demo game for people who've been following his YouTube channel. It's really cute. And now this new area, it looks very similar to the puzzle that we had before, and this once again goes into some of the puzzle design stuff that Mark has talked about in his YouTube series about catches and assumptions, because the similarities between this will lead you to think that certain things will play out exactly the same when they won't. Some things do play out the same as well, but now the magnet is already on the right side, but you can't carry the magnet when you're climbing up one of these, so you have to take it to the other side, but when you're carrying the magnet you can't jump high enough, so you have some extra throwing bits that you have to do. Nothing too complicated. But here is where the catch happens, so I'm going to just drop it here and do what we did before. We pull on the block, it goes to the other side, and we can just go back and throw the magnet up like we did before, except that these doors suddenly appeared. And this is what I've mentioned before, that a lot of other people have complained about, that in some of the puzzles where the doors start out open and then get closed, that it's not intuitively clear that there even are doors there. So from a broader puzzle design view, this is a good catch to make you rethink how to solve the puzzle compared to the previous very similar puzzle. But the fact that you don't even know that the doors are there at all when they're retracted is a bit of a problem, and could be solved by some extra visual elements in the layout design. One other thing that I want to point to, which is about the button, that the button on the right that controls the doors is a green button, and we've sort of established that the green button would be, you press the button, the state changes, you press the button again, the state changes back, whereas this is behaving more like one of the gold buttons, where it's one state when it's not being pressed, and then another state where it is being pressed, and that would be solved by changing the color of the button. At least it would be solved for people who aren't colorblind. But some bigger changes in the button design would be necessary for colorblind support. So here is the solution. You need to throw the magnet onto this platform, and then when you pull the magnetic platform over again, then it will actually attract the magnet to it once it passes by. Once again, it would be nice if we didn't have to wait until the very end to be able to pull the T-bar again. And now we have the same sort of precision issue where we have to pull on this and be very quick so that we can jump up to the magnet. So I'm going to press K twice, and I missed it. So yeah, it's kind of annoying having to wait for it to go all the way across just because I missed a jump, and that would be solved if you could press the T-bar when it's in the middle. It is nice that it is faster going back, but that is frustrating. I think it might also help because this is primarily a puzzle game and not a precision platformer to, I don't know, make things a bit closer together so that you don't have to be as fast. There we go. And as before, I can get off here, jump, catch the trapeze, and let go. Sorry, just fun grabbing the trapeze while it's on the way down. See what it does. Here we have a new mechanic, and this is something where there is kind of a quality of life decision that is made that, I don't know, I think maybe making things a bit more unfair to the player would actually make it feel better, because I would think that if I run into this laser that I would die, but it just acts like a wall. We still have to do something to the laser to get past it, but I know what I would expect when I see a laser in a video game like this would be that it would kill you and then you respawn. There's also a little bug. I am going to hold down the right arrow key, it bumps me back, and then I go forward a second time, and I'm still holding down on the right arrow key, but it's not moving me after the second time that I went through. Not sure why it did that, but what we have to do here is we pull on the T-bar, and once it goes in front of the laser, then of things. And so now we have a more complicated puzzle involving the lasers. If I try to go up here, I hit the laser. So I have to somehow block that laser. But look, there's this magnetic field. We should put a magnet there. But the magnetic field is A, behind a laser, and B, on this platform. And we can kill two birds with one stone by this T-bar that will shoot out these two drill platforms, which will block the laser and knock the magnet off. I want to try another little thing to see if I can break it by standing underneath. And I broke it. Yep. This is actually a good gameplay reason for why it would be good to make the lasers kill you rather than just act as walls, because standing underneath that laser it pushed me off to the side and now I'm stuck, I can't do anything. So I am going to restart the level. So let's go through here. And now let's do this the way that we're actually supposed to. Not deliberately stand under the laser while the drills are retracting. So, there is another weird issue with this particular puzzle, because that magnetic field beam goes just below the drill, so you would think that if you shoot the magnet up, that it would at least get stuck to the bottom of the drill by the magnetic field, and it doesn't. So I think that could be solved by just changing the size of the magnetic field so that it goes to just above the drill, or maybe making the drill a bit lower. But you have to pull the T-bar again to retract the drill, and then it's not too complicated a puzzle. Now it's getting caught in the magnetic field, and it can get pulled back up, and we can go up. And we have this extra fun little thing. I think if you are speed running, then it would be possible to not get pushed back that first time. But I wasn't speed running fast enough. I don't know what that window over there does, but what is going on here is we now have a situation where the laser is blocking our way through. We could ride the magnet up. We can even go to the side as we fall, maybe if we time things right, but the laser is blocking our way. We have a T-bar that controls these drills, and we see that the upper one blocks the laser, which can get us through, but now the lower one is blocking our ability to get through. And so here we have another example of one of the hatches that Mark talks about in his puzzle design videos, where you have an assumption of release the upper drill to block the laser, but doing that creates the catch of the lower drill also getting put forward, and that leads to the more complicated puzzle design. And I made a mistake by retracting, by pulling the T-bar when I meant to press the button, and things like that are reasons why it would be nice to be able to just pull out the T-bar again without waiting for it to run its full course, because what we want to do is get that magnetic field operational again, and then ride the magnetic field while those drills slowly come out, and then we can flip between them. So as I said, that issue of the T-bar making you wait all the way until the end before it lets you pull it again, it does mean that redoing things or resetting things if you make a mistake can take a bit too long, and this is fine for a small demo, but if this is a full, much bigger game, that frustration can accumulate quite a bit. Here we have another laser-based puzzle. This time the laser is being blocked, and we see that there's this triangular object in the upper right corner, and we'll see a mirror. You'll also see that there are these arcs going around the circle, and then only when all 4 of those arcs are filled does this door retract, and this will in fact go the other way, where you wait for the arcs to unfill, and then the door closes, and that's going to be a bit of a key to our way forward. So we want to drop the magnet, wait for the timer to run out, the doors open, and then get through while that timer runs out. One last thing that I do want to point out is that it is possible to get all the way to the end before those doors close again. I think if there was just a bit, like maybe a little platform that you needed to jump over or something to slow you down a bit, then that would assure that the player gets to see the doors closing, so that it's made absolutely clear that the opening and closing of the doors are on a timer. Because I was trying to test every little thing, I saw them open and close, but when I first played that, I got all the way to the end before even seeing the doors close. Puzzle area, and this is one of my favorite puzzles. So we see a laser, we see the trapeze. We know from previous puzzles that we want to get the magnet up here so that it will block the laser, and then we can use the trapeze. But if the magnet is up there, then we won't be able to ride the magnet up here to get to the trapeze, and so there is our catch. And here we need to see what these different buttons do and what the trapeze do, or the T-bar. So the button over here, we see it changes which magnetic field is operational, and if you look at the wire going around, you'll see that it connects to both of them, whereas the other button in the middle left of the screen is only connected to one of them, and that is going to be a hint as to the solution. And another thing that you will see is when you pull on this T-bar, drills are coming out on each side, but the one on the right went out a lot faster than the one on the left. and that I interpreted when I first played it as a hint that we wanted to very quickly ride up this magnetic field before the slower drill went forward. It does turn out that it is actually possible, if you are very fast, to ride this magnetic field up before it closes, and that is able to get you to sequence break and skip things. I don't know if that was an intentional speedrunning extra quick solution, but what we want to do here is, I'll just go over it. You don't want to immediately ride it up. It is one of these things where you want to retract the drill, pull on the T-bar again, and then ride it up while the drill is moving out. So, and then we can ride up, and then we can get to this area here. We still haven't blocked the laser, so that's unfortunate, but we do see that this button controls only the magnetic field on the left, but it also closes this door over here, and so that is kind of unfortunate. Well, it is fortunate because it prevents an overly simple solution to the puzzle, but it is also unfortunate because it is yet another example of not being given any sign that the doors were even there until the button was pressed. In addition to not seeing the doors, we don't see any sign of any wire connecting the button to the place where the doors are, so it's very unintuitive that it would do that, and it feels kind of like it was just sprung on us, rather than something that we should have known about while we tried to solve things. But we can do the rest of the puzzle, so now we see that both of the magnetic fields are off, and we can now make both of the magnetic fields be on. We can retract the drills, and I will show you another incorrect solution, or incomplete solution. So now we have both magnetic fields operational, so we can block the laser and go to this magnetic field. We just can't do anything with it because the magnet is still there. So we drop the magnet, pick it up, drop it right next to this magnetic field, turn on both magnetic fields, and do the same sort of precision thing where we pull the T-bar and ride the magnetic field up while the drill shoots out. And now, if we press on this button again, that door that was open is not open anymore. Oh, by the way, it is kind of nice. While it would be nice if the lasers killed you and made you restart, it is kind of nice that it sort of shoots you off onto the button, so that you end up pressing the button anyway. But now, with the button pressed, since that only affected the magnetic field on the left, we can still carry it over to the one on the right, and there is our solution. This is one of my favorite puzzles in the game. There are some elements of it, as I said, that can be improved upon to make it clearer what's going on, to make you not have to redo things if you messed up. The actual design of the puzzle, I really like this. This is my favorite puzzle in the whole collection. One extra thing that I want to point out is the magnetic field over here on the left. It's basically operating with what in logic terms would be an XOR gate, where the magnetic field will be on if one of the two buttons is pressed but not the other one, whereas if neither of them are pressed or if both of them are pressed, then it will be off. And I think as this gets developed into a bigger game, that a wider collection of logic gates like AND gates and OR gates, as well as this XOR gate, would make for a wider collection of puzzles. I think they would be cool. Some other people might not be into that sort of stuff as well, but just bringing that up as a potential idea for future puzzle types. Although if you do that, you would need some clearer visual indicators to distinguish between AND gates, OR gates, XOR gates, and the like. That's some other potential thing that could be employed for future puzzles down the line. Anyway, let's move on. One weird thing about this top area is you get pulled up very high and there's no ceiling being shown. That's just a little bit weird. It doesn't drastically impact the gameplay, but it does look a bit weird. Now this puzzle, this is, I think, a very well-designed puzzle. There are some parts of it that are a bit weird. Some parts of it that I think are extra good. So this is another good example of a puzzle that has a catch where you think that there will be a solution that will end up not being the complete solution. But before we get to that, some of the weird things are, if you look at the particle effects in these magnetic fields, you'll notice that these three magnetic fields, the particles are moving very slowly, whereas the one by that red block, the particles are moving a lot faster. And that's because these are much weaker magnetic fields. They are only ever used in this puzzle, and you notice that the character isn't really being lifted. The character is bouncing a little bit in this magnetic field when it's carrying the magnet, compared to being outside of the magnetic field, but it's not being drawn towards the top. Even when I jump, it makes the jump a bit floatier than it normally would be, but it doesn't carry the oh, here we go. Standing in between the two of them apparently does. That is a weird bug. I'm gathering that standing between the two magnetic fields is somehow accumulating the magnetic force of the two of them. That would be an interesting bug for Mark to look into as he edits things. That is really weird. It's kind of neat. Anyway, if I let go of the magnet, then the magnet on its own is able to get pulled up, and we see our catch. So, doing this, it retracted the two sets of doors, but it undid the magnetic field, thereby dropping this red block, and so we have to find some way around that issue, and it's going to involve the timer. So if I press this button, the magnetic field goes away, the timer goes off, and only after the timer runs out do things reset. Now, now the particle effects are gone because the magnetic field is off. That is weird how jumping on this isn't doing anything. Let me... here we go. Okay. So, another thing that I want to point out here, this is a thing that I especially like about the visual layout of this level, is that where the wires used to be, you see the outlines of wires, but you don't actually see the wires themselves. But now the wires are there, and so there's this clearer indication of power being running through the wires versus not running through the wires, that I think would be especially good if Mark decides to follow my suggestion from the previous puzzle of adding AND gates and OR gates and XOR gates and things like that. Having some clear indicator of whether electricity is or isn't running through the wires would be an interesting thing. Another thing that I want to point to is that here these doors are closed, but when I turn the magnetic field back on, wait out the timer, and the doors retract, now we actually do see part of we do see the tips of the doors. They don't completely retract into the scenery, and I think that this would be a good thing to implement every time these sorts of doors appear, so that we can always see that they are there even when they are closed. That would fix a lot of the issues that people had earlier on. at the doors. And look, in a subsequent puzzle, maybe the very next one, getting stuck between the doors will kill the character and make them respawn at the beginning. But here, the character is just there moving around. The jump button doesn't do anything, but the arrow keys do. And then I can just move out, and here I am like before. One bit of good design, not fundamental to the puzzle, but if you do get trapped in here, these spikes are very easy to clear, so they're not any sort of difficult precision platforming hazard like you would have in other places, but it does give you a quick way to restart if you mess up like that. There is one other thing that I want to try here. Maybe somebody who's faster at this sort of stuff can try and get the magnet caught in between them. I think it is possible if you try hard enough. But I'm just going to focus on getting the actual solution to the puzzle. So the solution depends on the fact that there's a timer running through everything, and so it also depends on having the magnet be directly above the button, so that it can fall and then float back up once it hits the button. So that is how this is going to work. You press the button, run through this set of doors. The button reactivated the magnetic field, and so the doors open again. That is a very clever puzzle design. There are, as I said, some weird elements. I don't know why the 3 magnetic fields on the left are so slow. I think it's to try and avoid some unintentional solutions. It does look really weird. It does feel really weird. Maybe if that was more standard throughout the game, these slow-moving magnetic fields, it would be more intuitive, but it does seem a bit weird. And there are some bugs in here, but it's a really well-designed puzzle, and there's some extra bits of visual design that I like. The fact that the retracted doors don't completely disappear. I just noticed another bug. I am pressing the jump button here and I'm not jumping. Now I'm jumping, and now I'm jumping again. I don't know why that happened. And I also like the fact that the wires are only colored green when there's actually stuff running through them. I think that's pretty clever and helps more clearly indicate whether things are on or off. And now we have some new mechanics. If you are colorblind, this button is gold and not green, which means that you have to be standing on it for it to move. And when you're not standing on it, it won't move. So you just move this platform in front of the laser, and then you can move on. Just a little tutorial to prepare you for some of the stuff ahead. One thing though is that this platform is on a chain. This next object is on a chain, and yet it works in a similar way. This is a button that will automatically move it to the side. I think there should be a chain there to indicate which way it's going, but we see that it was full of electricity, and once it plugged into the socket, the electricity transferred to the socket, thereby retracting the door. Those quality of life indicators of the existence of the door disappeared again. Oh well. And if you are colorblind, certain types of colorblindness at least will make the green look the same as the grayscale for the uncharged socket, so that is something that should be fixed for accessibility purposes. This isn't a very complicated puzzle. It is a bit weird, once again, with the lack of a conveyor belt. I would expect, based on the previous socket, that pulling on this would move it to the right, but it moves to the left instead. and grabbing the magnet onto it. Once again, this is really just showing you how things work, and then pulling it again moves it all the way to the right. Once the energy is drained into the socket, the magnetic field goes away as well, so that is the new mechanic that's being taught. One weird thing is that it is impossible to get the plug platform back to the middle location that it started out in. A little bit weird, doesn't really affect the gameplay, but it has a bit of a weird feeling to it. We'll carry this to our next puzzle. And it's nothing very complicated. The timer passes through, and we can move on. So just a little tutorial puzzle to show these new mechanics. And now we get to some more complicated stuff. This is another puzzle that I rather like. There are some quality of life changes that I think that would make things a little bit clearer, but it's another great example of an assumption and a catch, because we see that there are two lasers blocking our trapeze. One of them we have a very obvious solution to. We just put that magnet up there and one laser taken care of. Now what are we gonna do about this other one? Well, we've got the T-bar that we can pull, and it is, once again, it would be nice to see an actual chain to show which way these plugs are going. And now we see that we have the catch to our assumption. We assumed that getting that magnet up there would block the laser, and now that we've blocked the other laser, the bottom laser moved down and it's no longer being blocked. That is a clever catch for a puzzle design. So let's drop that magnet. Okay. Another issue about the fact that the lasers act as walls for the player character is that they don't act as walls for the magnet, and they shouldn't act as walls for the magnet. So things are a bit more complicated. So let's pull on the T-bar again and see what happens. So this plug moves very slowly to the other side. That slowness is for a purpose, because there is some precision stuff going on. Because what we need to do is, I will show you the solution. We get the magnet up to the top. Okay, let's try this again. And now the magnet is on the top of the platform. So, when we move, oops, wrong button. We need to use the T-bar, not the button. Okay, so when we move this plug back, that is a bit of a weird visual glitch, with the magnet staying still as the plug moved until the plug got the magnetic charge. And now we have our solution. One other thing that I want to point out is that at the very beginning of the puzzle, these now invisible doors were shut down, and so it wasn't actually possible to get to this area when both lasers were out, and if there would be some way to allow you to do that without completely destroying the puzzle, that would be nice. But that is a nicely designed puzzle, has a good set of assumptions and catches that you have to work your way around. some visual glitches, some things being a bit slow. It would be nice if the movement of the plug was along a chain, like some of those other moving platforms, so that you would know where it's moving. And we are at the final puzzle, which I do not like. So this plug is moving automatically, it's not being controlled by anything. We can get ourselves over to the other side here. And we find that this gold button will halt the back and forth movement of the plug. And there we go, now it's moving again. And so what we want to do is get the magnet up to block this laser, and that will open the door on the side, but the plug has to be all the way to the right in order to open the closer door. So here's the basic logic. So we can if I had pressed the gold button, that would have been a bit easier. So just a moment. Okay, so here we got the magnet up to the top. It blocked the laser and opened the doors on the right, but the plug has to be in the socket on the right in order to open the other set of doors. And as it goes back, it undoes the magnetic field, causing it to drop back down, and there isn't really any good way when the magnetic field gets turned on again for us to be able to shoot things up. And this is where an issue that I've pointed out about the difficulties of puzzle platformers having both action and puzzle elements can get in the way, because I was trying to solve this by seeing if there was some way that I could use clever button presses to get the magnet above this plug. I don't know if there's any way to do it. I don't think there is, and it's not the intended solution anyway. So the intended solution is, well, it involves destroying the magnet, because when the magnet is destroyed, it comes out of this Flappy Bird pipe at the top of the screen, and you want to get it stuck to the top of the plug as before. The problem, as I said, is that when the idea was introduced of destroyed magnets respawning through those pipes, the idea was that it was something to fix your mistakes and not a mechanic in its own right, and so it didn't really seem to me as if that would be what the solution was. It wasn't really intuitive as a solution. The other thing is, if you get your timing a little bit wrong, then you get stuck on this side and the magnet spawned at the wrong time, and you have to restart. This time, if you do get stuck between these doors when they're closed, you die, unlike that earlier puzzle, so that is nice. But let's try this one last time, trying to get the actual solution right. This was very unintuitive. I spent a lot of time trying a whole bunch of things, none of which got me any closer to the actual solution. So I'm going to wait around here, and what I'm going to do is let it go all the way through, get it on its way back. Shoot it, and here we have another one of these issues where the fact that the buttons act as a wall when you're moving to the side, forcing you to jump, that actively hurt my ability to solve it. It made this extra bit of speed necessary that really shouldn't have been necessary, so I'm going to try this again. But if they let you just roll onto the buttons instead of having to jump onto them, you would have more time to get to the button and can focus more on actually trying to solve the puzzle rather than tight precision movements that you wouldn't really want in a slower paced puzzle game. So, let's try this again. Have to do a lot of waiting here. And this time I hit the wall while trying to jump onto the button, and it made my attempt to jump sideways and then just jumping straight up, so I have to redo this again. It's just really frustrating, even when you know what the solution is to the puzzle. These annoying precision bits just make it take too much time, and I think that this puzzle needs some work. Just a moment. Let's wait for the drop. Okay, there we go. And let's wait for the okay. And for some reason, it's still stuck to the bottom, even though it dropped from the top, and so this needs to be done all over again. This time I don't need to respawn myself, I just need to get the magnet again. And yeah, this whole puzzle is very frustrating. There's some interesting concepts in this puzzle, but it's not one of the best designed out there, or not one of the best put together. Oh god. I accidentally pressed the wrong button, so now I need to wait for it to go all the way back across. It's really slow, it's really frustrating. Waiting. And the floatiness gets in the way again, so god, yeah, I don't like this puzzle. This again. Let's go over. Grab the magnet. Carry it across very slowly. Wait until it automatically drops me at the very opposite end. Move over to the side. This time I'm going to stay very close to the magnet. The tighter controls that let you do shorter jumps that Mark is working on would also make this a bit easier. Okay, hopefully this time it will actually work. Yes. So this time the magnet stuck to the top, and here is our solution. Because now we can get both doors open at the same time. And so as I said, conceptually there are a lot of neat ideas in that puzzle. The execution was not very good though. It did not do a good job at letting you know what the solution was, because there weren't any previous puzzles that relied on respawning as the key to the solution. If there was an earlier puzzle that was much simpler, that was just about respawning the magnet as the solution to a puzzle, then that would be a more intuitive thing to guess in this puzzle. Also, it is really slow and way too dependent on precision aiming. That forces you to wait a really long time if you mess up on the precision, even once you know what the solution is. But despite that sour note to end, I really like the game overall. I am looking forward to it going from a minimum viable product into a full game. Here we have this nice little closing screen. It says thanks for playing, and this shows a bunch of assets that Mark created that he didn't end up using in the MVP, but which he will presumably use down the line. So there are chomping blocks, there's a key, there's this robot thing, another tooltip that looks like a platform. And here's another issue about the floatiness of the controls. This robot is like a Goomba. You can jump on it, but the floatiness of the controls makes it very hard to actually aim, but they don't actually kill you if they hit you. They hit you and then they get knocked out, and that is a way that you can actually jump on top of them, so let me give that a try. There we go. This is another magnet. This one has a face. I cannot jump over the robot holding the magnet, but I can throw it. There are some weird things here if I'm standing on top of it. I'm holding down on the right key. It's not letting me move. It's not letting me jump. I'm pressing the jump key. The left key now doesn't do anything. But... Uh-oh. Okay, there are some bugs here. But if I restart, this isn't even the level, but here we go. I can show what this does. Let's drop it over so that we don't get stuck there. So just when you are standing on top of this guy, there are some bugs that come up, probably with just platform collision issues that need to be looked into. This works just like the other magnets, but the colors are different. Once again, if you have red-green color blindness, or I'm not sure what type of color blindness, since this is red and blue, but if you are colorblind, you might not notice the changes in the colors, but this is a blue magnet that gets attracted to red magnetic fields, whereas the red magnet that we had throughout the game gets attracted to blue magnetic fields, and it's based on like the polarity of the magnet, and that's one of the ideas that he has for future puzzles down the line. So all in all, I thought this was a really good game, considering that this is the product of one person who has never made a completed game before. That is really impressive, so I'm looking forward to seeing where it's going, and if you are Mark Brown, I hope you make good use of the comments and critiques and praises that I have made towards the game. If you are not Mark Brown, I hope this gives you some ideas of what is involved in making games yourself, and I'm uploading this to my YouTube channel. There isn't much there at the moment. There's just a piece of experimental electronic music that I wrote back at the beginning of the pandemic. Feel free to listen to that. But I am also working on a game myself, not a platformer, but it is a puzzle game about spinning levers attached to other spinning levers that draw weird curves. And I do intend to start my own devlogs for that game, so if you do want to follow my YouTube channel, then you'll see some devlogs for that game coming up as well. And also, if you are not familiar with Mark Brown or Game Maker's Toolkit, check out his channel, including this developing series as well as his other series. And thank you for watching, and I will quit the game. Bye.